Hook from a paradox. Opening. Hook. Have you ever noticed this strange paradox in life? The more things we own, the heavier we seem to feel? At first, it sounds backward, doesn't it? We believe that more possessions will bring us comfort, happiness, and even a sense of security. Yet, for many of us, every new thing we add seems to carry its own weight, a responsibility, a worry, an invisible string that ties us down. Think about your own home for a moment. Is there a drawer, a closet, or maybe even an entire room that's overflowing with stuff you rarely use? Every time you open it, instead of feeling joy, you feel a little stressed. That's not just clutter in the room, that's clutter in the mind. Storytelling. A life filled with more. Let me share with you a simple story. There was a man who spent his entire life chasing after more. More clothes, more gadgets, more cars. He told himself, once I have this, I'll finally be happy. Once I own that, life will feel complete. At first, the new things did make him excited. The shiny phone, the new furniture, the bigger house, it all gave him a rush. But as time passed, something curious happened. Instead of happiness, he felt weighed down. His big house required endless cleaning. His new car brought constant worry about scratches and accidents. His overflowing closet made him feel guilty for buying things he barely wore. And slowly, he realized, his possessions didn't belong to him. He belonged to his possessions. This isn't just his story, is it? Many of us fall into the same trap. The world tells us happiness is just one purchase away. But when we get there, we only want more. And the cycle continues. Buddhist insight, the root of the paradox. Over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha saw this human pattern with crystal clarity. He taught, with fewer desires, there is less suffering. At first glance, that statement seems too simple. But look closer. Desire is like a fire. It never says, I am satisfied. The moment we feed it, it asks for more. Imagine drinking salty water when you're thirsty. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. That's exactly how unchecked desire works. It promises satisfaction, but it delivers the opposite. More emptiness, more craving. This is why simplicity is not about poverty. It's about freedom. When we reduce our endless chasing, we reduce our invisible chains. We create space for peace to enter. Reflection, turning the question to the viewer. So I want to ask you, in your own life, where does more actually feel like less? Maybe it's the pressure of keeping up with trends, or the stress of maintaining a lifestyle that looks good on the outside but feels heavy on the inside. What if happiness was never about adding more, but about removing what weighs us down? What if joy was less about owning and more about being? Personal perspective, the taste of enough. I remember a moment in my own life that shifted everything. I had been working hard, saving money, and I finally bought something I had been dreaming about for months. I thought that the moment I held it in my hands, I would feel complete. And for a few days, I did feel excited. But soon, the joy faded. I was already thinking of the next thing I wanted. Then one evening, sitting quietly with a simple cup of tea, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a deep, calm contentment. It struck me that this little moment, no price tag, no achievement, was worth more than the expensive purchase I had chased. In that instant, I understood what the Buddha meant. Happiness doesn't come from the next thing. It comes from realizing that this very moment can already be enough. Broader view. Why modern life feels so heavy. We live in a culture that constantly whispers, you are not enough until you have more. Advertising thrives on this message. Social media amplifies it. Every scroll shows us a lifestyle shinier than our own, and we quietly believe we are behind. But here's the truth. No matter how much we acquire, there will always be someone with more. And if we tie our happiness to comparison, we will always lose. The Buddha offered a different path. He invited us to step off that endless treadmill and rediscover the freedom of simplicity. Simplicity is not about rejecting life's joys. It's about choosing wisely, knowing that joy doesn't depend on quantity. Sometimes, the less we carry, the further we can travel. Gentle guidance, a small practice for the viewer. Maybe tonight, before you sleep, open one drawer or shelf. Choose just one thing you don't really need anymore. Ask yourself, does this add peace to my life, or does it take space from it? If it doesn't serve your heart, let it go. You may be surprised at how light one small act can make you feel. Simplicity starts not with giant leaps, but with small steps. Each little release is like taking a stone out of your backpack. Slowly, your walk through life becomes easier, lighter, freer. So yes, it is a paradox. The more we chase, the heavier we become. And the less we hold on to, the freer we feel. But that raises an important question. If reducing desire brings peace, how do we know when we truly have enough? What is the point where the heart finally feels satisfied, not restless? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. What are the real conditions that make a human being feel enough? Until then, I invite you to sit with this paradox in your own life. Maybe, just maybe, the key to happiness isn't in adding more, but in learning to rest with less. Happiness from having less. Opening. Hook. You don't need more. You just need less. At first, that sounds strange, doesn't it? We are raised to believe that the road to happiness is about adding more success, more possessions, more achievements. But what if happiness has less to do with accumulation and more to do with subtraction? What if the real secret isn't in what we add to life, but in what we are willing to let go of? Contrast, the weight of wanting more. Think about this. When our lives revolve around endless wanting, we are like someone constantly filling a bag that already feels too heavy. Another pair of shoes, another subscription, another goal on the horizon. At first, these things give us a spark of joy. But soon, that joy fades, and the hunger returns. It's like chasing the horizon. You can run your entire life and never reach it. And the more we carry, the less space we actually have. Our closets get crowded. Our schedules get suffocated. Even our minds feel cluttered, restless, unable to sit still. The promise of more ends up becoming a prison. The other side, peace in having less. Now let's flip that image. Imagine a life where you keep only what truly matters. A room with just the essentials, but it feels spacious and calm. A calendar not jammed with obligations, but open enough to breathe. A mind not consumed with craving, but able to rest in the present moment. Doesn't that sound like freedom? This isn't about deprivation. It's about clarity. It's about discovering that happiness doesn't come from piling on, but from peeling back. Story: The Zen Master and the Bowl. There's an old Zen story that captures this beautifully. A master was once asked why he lived with so few possessions. His home was almost empty. His most valuable item? A simple wooden bowl he used every day to eat. Someone asked him, "Don't you feel poor, having so little?" The master smiled and replied, "On the contrary, I feel rich, because this bowl is enough." That answer holds a wisdom many of us overlook. The bowl wasn't just an object, it was a mirror of his mind. Empty of clutter, but full of contentment. He didn't see himself as lacking. He saw himself as already complete. Reflection, turning to the viewer. Now let me turn that question to you. What's the bowl in your life? What's that one simple thing you could treasure that already brings you joy without needing anything extra? Maybe it's the morning coffee you sip slowly. Maybe it's the laughter of your child. Maybe it's a walk in the park at sunset. Notice how none of those require a credit card. None of them depend on status. They exist outside the realm of more. They already shine, exactly as they are. Personal perspective, the beauty of subtraction. I once went through a period of my life where I was constantly chasing. More hours at work. More recognition. More financial security. I thought, once I reach this next milestone, I'll finally relax. But the milestones kept moving. The moment I achieved one, I immediately set my eyes on another. It was exhausting. Then, unexpectedly, life slowed me down. A health scare forced me to step back. For the first time, I wasn't able to do more. I had to do less. At first, it felt like a loss. But slowly, I noticed something remarkable. By subtracting the unnecessary, I began to see clearly what truly mattered. Conversations with loved ones. Quiet mornings. Even simple meals became a source of gratitude. That experience taught me a truth I had ignored for years. Happiness often comes not from gaining more, but from needing less. Wisdom, the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha expressed this in the teaching of less desire, less suffering. He wasn't against enjoying life. He wasn't saying we should deny ourselves everything. But he saw the danger of being enslaved by endless craving. Desire is a flame that never says, enough. The more we feed it, the bigger it grows. But when we learn to reduce that fire, even just a little, the room cools, the smoke clears, and peace can enter. Simplicity is not a punishment. It is a form of liberation. Guiding questions. Engaging the viewer. So I want to ask you, where in your life are you carrying too much? What habits, possessions, or even expectations are weighing you down instead of lifting you up? And what would happen if you gently started to subtract? Imagine the space you'd create, not just in your home, but in your heart. Broader view, why we fear less. But here's the challenge. Many of us equate less with loss. We think, if I give this up, I'll be deprived. If I don't keep adding, I'll fall behind. This fear is understandable. We live in a society that glorifies accumulation. Success is measured by size, of houses, of paychecks, of achievements. To choose less can feel like swimming against the current. But let me offer another perspective. Maybe less isn't about loss at all. Maybe it's about making room. Less noise means more clarity. Less clutter means more space. Less rushing means more presence. When you think of it that way, less is not emptiness. It's fullness of a different kind. Practical step, a gentle experiment. If you want to try this in your own life, start small. Choose one area, maybe your morning routine. Instead of rushing to do 10 things, simplify it to 3. Notice how that feels. Or, choose one item in your home that you rarely use but always keep. Let it go. Watch how surprisingly light you feel after. Each act of subtraction is an act of liberation. It's a way of saying, I don't need more to be whole. I am already enough. Closing. Transition to next video. So yes, it's true, you don't always need more. Often, you just need less. Because in that space of less, you discover peace, clarity, and a deeper kind of happiness. But here's the real question. How do we let go without feeling like we are losing something precious? How do we practice subtraction in a way that doesn't create pain, but instead creates freedom? That's what we'll explore in the next video, the art of letting go without suffering. Until then, I invite you to look at your own life and ask, what can I gently release today so that my happiness can grow not from having more, but from needing less? Simplicity, a strength. Opening, hook. Simplicity is not poverty. It is a strength of the spirit. At first, that may sound unusual. In our modern world, strength is often measured by what we can acquire, titles, possessions, influence. But what if real strength lies not in what we hold on to, but in what we can live without? What if the ability to live simply is not a weakness, but a hidden form of power? The hidden power of simplicity. Think about the people you admire most. Isn't it true that those who live simply often radiate a kind of quiet confidence? They are not pulled in 100 directions by greed or comparison. Their energy is not scattered chasing endless desires. Instead, they walk lightly, with clarity and calm. Simplicity has its own magnetic power. When someone is not controlled by possessions or social status, they become free. Free to choose. Free to be themselves. Free to say no to what does not matter, and yes to what truly does. That freedom is rare, and rare things always have value. Story, the monk and the visitor. There's a story from the Buddhist tradition. A wealthy visitor once came to see a monk who lived in a small hut. Inside, there was almost nothing, just a mat to sit on, a robe to wear, and a bowl for food. The visitor was shocked. He asked, "Where are all your things? Don't you own anything else?" The monk simply smiled and asked, "Where are your things?" The visitor replied, "At my home, of course." The monk nodded gently and said, "So it is with me. This world is not my home. I am just passing through." That's the strength of simplicity. It reminds us that we don't have to carry the weight of everything. When we know we are just passing through, we don't cling so tightly. And in that letting go, there is a strength far greater than anything money can buy. Reflection, turning to the viewer. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, what would your life feel like if you weren't so tied to things? If you didn't constantly compare with neighbors, colleagues, or friends? Imagine walking into your home and feeling space instead of clutter. Imagine looking at your schedule and seeing room to breathe. Imagine living in a way where you don't need to impress anyone because your peace speaks louder than appearances. Wouldn't that feel like strength? Personal perspective. The misunderstanding of simplicity. I remember a time when I thought simplicity meant going without, like giving up joy or living with less dignity. But over time, I learned that simplicity doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. Think of it like pruning a tree. At first, it feels like you're cutting something away. But in truth, you're making space for the tree to grow healthier, fuller, stronger. The same is true for us. When we simplify, our possessions, our desires, even our thoughts, we don't become weaker. We become lighter, clearer, and more resilient. Wisdom. Buddhist teaching on Thiu Dc Tri Tuc. In Buddhism, there is a beautiful phrase, Thiu Dc Tri Tuc. It means to desire little and to know contentment. This is not about rejecting life's joys. It is about recognizing that endless desire is a chain. When you want less, you suffer less. And when you know how to be content, you are unshakable, even in the face of temptation. That's why simplicity is not a sacrifice, but a shield. It protects us from the constant noise of not enough. It gives us the courage to stand firm when the world tells us to keep chasing more, gently challenging the viewer. So I want to ask you honestly, in your own life, where does complication weaken you? Maybe it's in the endless cycle of upgrading things you don't truly need. Or maybe it's in relationships where appearances matter more than authenticity. And on the other side, where could simplicity strengthen you? Perhaps in saying no to what drains your energy. Perhaps in focusing only on what brings real peace. What would happen if, just for a moment, you stopped running toward more and instead embraced enough? Broader view. Simplicity in a complicated world. We live in a culture that thrives on complexity. More apps, more options, more distractions. We are told that to be happy, we must keep up with an ever-expanding lifestyle. But this constant reaching doesn't give us strength, it exhausts us. Simplicity is countercultural. It says, I don't need to own everything to feel complete. I don't need to prove myself by what I consume. I am enough, right here, right now. And here's the irony. The moment we embrace simplicity, we actually stand out. In a world obsessed with noise, stillness is magnetic. In a society of excess, simplicity is power. Practical step. Trying simplicity as strength. Here's a small practice you can try. The next time you feel tempted to buy something, pause. Ask yourself, is this filling a real need, or is it just feeding a craving? If it's just craving, let it go. Notice how empowered you feel in that moment. Saying no is not weakness. It is strength. Each time you resist unnecessary desire, you reclaim a little more of your freedom. Closing. Transition to next video. So yes, simplicity is not poverty. It is strength. It frees you from chains you didn't even know you were carrying. It gives you clarity in a noisy world. It gives you freedom in a culture of excess. And most importantly, it helps you live a life that feels authentic, light, and whole. But this leads us to an important question. If simplicity is such a strength, can it also help us face temptation? Can living simply actually make us stronger against the pressures and desires that pull us every day? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. The power of a contented heart. Until then, remember this. Simplicity isn't about less life. It's about more life. The kind of life that is strong, free, and deeply at peace. The story of the torn robe. Hook. A torn robe can teach us more than a closet full of clothes. Main script. Have you ever stopped to wonder why some people, no matter how simply they live, command respect and admiration without saying a word? They might not wear the latest fashion, drive the newest car, or own much at all, and yet when you're in their presence, you feel calm, grounded, even inspired. There's an old story from the Buddhist tradition that speaks to this truth. It's the story of a monk who owned almost nothing. His robe was worn thin, patched again and again, the fabric fraying at the edges. By all appearances, you might think he was poor, perhaps even someone to pity. But those who met him never felt pity. Instead, they felt awe. When he walked through the village, people naturally bowed their heads. They felt a quiet reverence in his presence. It wasn't about the robe. It was about something radiating from within him, an unshakable compassion, a warmth that reached beyond words. One curious villager once asked, "Venerable sir, your robe is torn, patched so many times. Yet everyone respects you. Why is that?" The monk smiled gently and replied, "Because a robe is only cloth. Respect comes not from what we wear, but from the heart people meet." That simple statement carries a profound truth. Our real blessings, our true wealth, are not measured by appearances. They're measured by the quality of our heart. Now, let's pause and bring this into our everyday lives. Think about the culture we live in today. We are bombarded with messages that say, buy more, own more, look better. Advertisements constantly whisper that if you have the right clothes, the right car, the right watch, people will admire you. And yes, those things can draw attention. But is attention the same as respect? Is it the same as love? Here's the difference. Attention fades, respect lasts. And respect isn't built on fabric or possessions, it's built on character. I'll share a personal reflection. I once had a colleague who wore the same old sweater almost every day. It was plain, a little faded, and honestly, nobody would call it stylish. But everyone in the office respected him deeply. Why? Because whenever you spoke to him, he gave you his full presence. He listened. He made you feel seen. When someone was struggling, he offered quiet encouragement. When conflicts arose, he calmed the room with his steady kindness. That old sweater became almost symbolic. He didn't need to shine on the outside, because his presence shone from within. Isn't that more powerful than anything you can buy? Buddhism has a teaching called Theodicee Tri Tuc, which means to desire little and no contentment. It doesn't mean living in misery or rejecting all comforts. It means recognizing that chasing after endless possessions can never bring lasting peace. Contentment, the true kind, grows when we cultivate a heart of compassion, generosity, and humility. Let me ask you, if you lost everything you own today, your clothes, your house, your car, what part of you would still remain untouched? That part, that unshakable core, is your true wealth. And that's exactly what the torn robe teaches us. Fabric can wear out, possessions can disappear, but the quality of our heart, that's something no loss can touch. Here's another perspective. Sometimes we spend years curating our appearance, hoping it will earn us approval. But the approval we gain is fragile. The moment we can't keep up, when our clothes go out of style, when the shine of our possessions fades, so does that approval. It's like building a house on sand. But when we invest in kindness, in integrity, in inner peace, people feel it. They may forget what you wore, but they will never forget how you made them feel. It reminds me of a line often attributed to Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's what the monk in his torn robe embodied. Now, let's reflect together. What truly matters more, a closet full of clothes, or a heart full of compassion? Which will leave a deeper impression on the people around you? Which will last when time wears away everything else? The answer seems obvious, yet living it requires courage. It means daring to step off the treadmill of appearances. It means choosing to nurture what cannot be bought. And here's the liberating truth. When you shift your focus from what people see to what people feel when they are with you, life becomes lighter. You no longer need to prove yourself with things. Your presence itself becomes the gift. So the lesson of the torn robe is this: blessings don't come from what we put on our body, but from what we carry in our heart. True wealth is invisible to the eye but unforgettable to the soul. But this raises a deeper question. If blessings come from the heart, how do we cultivate them? How do we grow this invisible wealth so that even with nothing in hand, we can still be rich in spirit? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. Where do blessings truly come from? Closing thought. Before you go, let me leave you with this. The next time you look in the mirror, don't just notice what you're wearing. Ask yourself instead, what energy am I radiating today? Am I carrying kindness, compassion, patience? Because those are the robes that never tear, never fade, and never go out of style. Peace in every meal. Hook. A simple meal of vegetables can taste sweeter than the grandest feast. Main script. When was the last time you sat down for a meal and truly tasted it? Not just with your mouth, but with your whole being. So often, meals become rushed, background moments in our busy day. We eat while scrolling on our phones, while watching TV, while thinking of what's next. Food goes in, but peace does not. And yet, hidden in something as ordinary as a modest meal is the key to a happiness far deeper than we imagine. There's a story of a small family who lived simply. They didn't have much. Their table was plain, their dishes humble. On most nights, their dinner was nothing more than rice, some vegetables, maybe a bowl of soup. By society's standards, it was far from luxurious. But when they sat together, something extraordinary happened. The parents looked at their children with eyes full of love. The children laughed and shared stories of their day. Sometimes there was silence too, but it was a comfortable silence, woven with presence and warmth. That table, though modest, was overflowing with affection, gratitude, and peace. One evening, a visitor joined them. At first, he looked at the food and thought, "Is this all?" But as the meal went on, he felt something shift inside him. Each bite, shared in love and laughter, felt more nourishing than any grand banquet he had ever attended. Later, he confessed, "I have dined at tables with gold plates and endless courses, but never have I felt so full." This story may sound simple, but isn't that the point? Sometimes the deepest nourishment doesn't come from the food itself, but from the spirit in which it's shared. Buddhism teaches us the practice of mindful eating, to eat with awareness, gratitude, and presence. It's not about counting calories or choosing the fanciest cuisine. It's about recognizing that every grain of rice, every piece of bread, carries the sun, the rain, the soil, and the labor of countless hands. When you eat with this awareness, suddenly even the simplest dish becomes a miracle. Think about it. How many people had a hand in the food on your plate right now? The farmer who planted the seeds, the workers who harvested, the truck driver who delivered, the hands that cooked. A whole invisible community has given its effort just so you can take one bite. Isn't that astonishing? But here's the paradox. The more options we have, the less satisfied we often feel. Maybe you've experienced this, standing in front of a refrigerator full of food, or scrolling through dozens of takeout menus, and still thinking, "I don't know what I want." It's as if abundance sometimes blinds us to the gift that's already before us. Contrast that with the taste of a simple meal when you're fully present. A bowl of soup on a cold day. Fresh fruit in the summer. Even plain bread, when eaten with gratitude, can feel like a feast. And this isn't just about food, it's about life. When we learn to savor the small, simple joys, we realize we don't need excess to feel full. A modest meal shared with loved ones can be more satisfying than a banquet eaten in loneliness. Let me share something personal. A few years ago, I had the chance to eat at a luxury restaurant. The kind where every plate looks like art, where the silverware shines, and where the bill could pay for a week's groceries. The food was extraordinary, yes. But you know what I remember most? Not the taste. What stays with me is the feeling of distance at that table. Everyone was dressed up, polite, but distracted, half of them scrolling on their phones. The food was exquisite, but the connection was missing. Compare that to a memory of eating with my family on a rainy night. We had soup and bread, nothing fancy. But the laughter was real, the warmth undeniable. That meal, though humble, lives in my heart as one of the best I've ever had. So what does this tell us? True satisfaction isn't in the menu, it's in the mindfulness. Mindful eating invites us to slow down, to put away distractions, to chew with awareness, to actually taste. Have you ever tried eating a single raisin mindfully? It sounds silly, but it's a common meditation exercise. When you take the time to notice its texture, its sweetness, its aroma, you realize how much depth there is in just one bite. Multiply that awareness by a whole meal, and suddenly dinner becomes not just nourishment for the body, but also for the soul. And beyond the food, mindful eating is about the people around us. In that quiet attention, we recognize the presence of those we love. Each smile, each shared word, becomes part of the meal. Let me ask you, how often do we trade these small, precious joys for the illusion of more? How many times do we ignore the warmth of a shared meal just to chase after bigger, flashier pleasures? We spend so much time looking for happiness in grand moments, exotic vacations, expensive restaurants, luxury items, when in truth, joy is often sitting right in front of us, disguised as a simple plate of food and the company of those we love. Maybe the real question isn't what should I eat tonight, but rather how am I eating tonight? Am I present? Am I grateful? Am I aware that this simple meal is a gift? The lesson is clear. A meal, however simple, can be sacred if eaten with mindfulness and gratitude. And when we practice this, every bite becomes peace. But here's something to reflect on. If a humble meal can bring us so much joy when we are mindful, why do we so often miss it? Why do we overlook these simple joys while chasing after things that never quite satisfy? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. Mindfulness, the key to small joys. Closing thought. So the next time you sit down to eat, pause for just a moment. Look at your plate. Take a breath. Feel gratitude. Taste each bite as if it were the first time. Notice not just the food, but the company, the silence, the presence. That's where peace lives, in the simplest of meals, when the heart is awake. Simplicity to see yourself clearly. Hook. When your room is less cluttered, your mind shines brighter. Main script. Let me ask you something. Have you ever cleaned your room or your desk after it had been messy for weeks, and suddenly felt like you could finally breathe again? Almost as if clearing the space outside somehow cleared the space inside too. That's no coincidence. The spaces we live in reflect the state of our minds. And often, the clutter we see around us is a mirror of the clutter we are carrying within. There's a story I once heard about a young monk. He lived in a small hut with just the basics: a mat to sleep on, a robe, a bowl. One day, a visitor asked him, "Don't you feel empty, living with so little?" The monk smiled and replied, "Empty? No. On the contrary, I feel free. Because there's nothing here to distract me from seeing myself." That story holds a truth many of us forget. The more stuff we pile up, the more noise we surround ourselves with, the harder it becomes to see clearly who we really are. Think about your own space for a moment. What does it say about you? The overflowing closet. The desk buried under papers. The drawer full of things you haven't touched in years. Each item may seem harmless, but together they form a kind of weight, a silent pressure. And the same thing happens in the mind. We carry thoughts the way we carry old clothes, piled up, unused, but never thrown away. Worries about the past. Fears about the future. Regrets. Expectations. They crowd our inner room, leaving little space for peace. The Buddha once said, "When the mind clings, it suffers. When it lets go, it becomes light." Just like a room feels lighter when we let go of what no longer serves us, our hearts feel lighter when we release what we don't need to carry anymore. But here's something important. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It's not about living in an empty room or giving up everything you own. It's about asking, what do I really need? What actually brings me peace? And what just distracts me? When we strip away the excess, whether in our homes or in our minds, what remains is clarity. And in that clarity, we begin to see ourselves, not the self that's busy chasing, not the self buried under clutter, but the self that is calm, spacious, and free. Let me share a personal moment. A few years ago, my home office had become a disaster zone. Books stacked everywhere, random papers in piles, little gadgets I hadn't touched in months. I kept telling myself, I'll clean it up tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. And yet, every time I walked in, I felt a heaviness. My mind couldn't focus. Until one weekend, I finally set aside a whole day to clear it. I sorted through everything, donated what I didn't need, recycled what I'd been holding onto just in case. When it was done, the room looked almost bare compared to before. But here's the surprising part. I felt lighter, sharper, even calmer inside. Sitting in that clean, open space, I could actually hear my own thoughts. And in that quiet, I realized something. I wasn't just decluttering a room. I was decluttering myself. Maybe you've felt this too. Why is it that cleaning out a closet or organizing a drawer can feel like therapy? Because on some level, it is. Our surroundings shape our minds. When the outside is chaotic, the inside struggles to find peace. But when the outside is ordered, the inside has room to breathe. This is why many spiritual traditions emphasize simplicity. It's not just about owning less, it's about seeing more. About clearing away what's unnecessary so the essential can shine through. But here's the challenge. While it's relatively easy to clean a room, it's much harder to clean the mind. You can throw out old clothes in an afternoon, but how do you throw out old anger, old fear, old patterns that no longer serve you? This is where the real work lies. It's not just about organizing our shelves, but about organizing our hearts. Not just darning the clutter in our rooms, but loosening the clutter in our thoughts. Because let's be honest, many of us live in mental messiness. We replay old conversations. We carry grudges. We hold on to what ifs and should-haves. And every one of these takes up space, just like boxes in a crowded attic. So the question becomes, how do we not only clear our rooms, but also clear our minds? How do we live simply not just outside, but inside too? Here's a thought experiment. Imagine walking into a quiet room with just a chair, a window, and soft light coming in. Nothing else. Now imagine walking into a room stuffed with old furniture, piles of boxes, and no clear place to sit. Which space feels more like you could rest? Our minds are like those rooms. And the more we practice letting go, the more restful our inner rooms become. But simplicity is also courage. It takes courage to let go of the familiar, even if it no longer serves us. That shirt you haven't worn in 10 years but keep just in case. That story you tell yourself about not being good enough. That regret you hold onto as if it keeps you safe. Letting go feels scary because it feels like losing. But in truth, it's not loss, it's liberation. You don't lose yourself when you let go. You find yourself. So maybe tonight, after this video, you can try a little experiment. Look around your room. Pick one item you haven't used in a long time. Ask yourself, does this still serve me? If not, thank it and let it go. Then, take a moment to notice how you feel. And then take that practice inward. When an old thought or worry arises, ask, does this serve me now? If not, acknowledge it, thank it, and gently let it go. Little by little, we create not just a simpler room, but a simpler mind. Closing thought. Simplicity isn't about having less. It's about seeing more. About making space in our rooms, and space in our hearts, to recognize who we really are beneath the clutter. When your surroundings are lighter, your mind becomes clearer. And when your mind is clear, you begin to discover a deeper kind of peace. But of course, the real question remains, how do we truly declutter the mind, not just the room? That's what we'll explore in the next video, the practice of letting go through meditation. So, maybe today, start small. Clean a corner of your room. Then clean a corner of your heart. You might just find that both shine a little brighter. The richest person is the one who needs the least. Hook. They say the richest person isn't the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. Have you ever noticed how our culture constantly pushes us to want more? A bigger house, a newer car, the latest gadget, a better vacation. We are told, almost daily, that happiness is just one purchase away. Yet, the strange thing is, when we finally get what we wanted, the joy fades so quickly. A few days, maybe a few weeks, and then the wanting returns. It's almost like chasing a horizon. You run and run, but it never gets any closer. Now, contrast that with a very different kind of wealth, the wealth of needing less. This isn't about settling for misery or giving up ambition. It's about discovering that true contentment doesn't come from endlessly adding more, but from realizing we already have enough. Let me tell you a story that brings this philosophy to life. There was once a wealthy merchant, known throughout his town for his grand mansion, his fleets of caravans, and his overflowing treasuries. From the outside, people envied him. They thought, he must be the happiest man alive. He can buy whatever he desires. But behind those heavy doors, the truth was far different. He hardly slept at night. He worried about thieves stealing his gold, competitors taking his market, or bad weather ruining his trade routes. His mind was a storm of anxieties, and his wealth, instead of protecting him, chained him even tighter to fear. One evening, as he wandered restless through the streets, he noticed a humble monk sitting under a tree. The monk wore only a simple robe, his bowl empty beside him, yet he radiated a calmness that felt almost impossible to the merchant. The monk was humming quietly, watching the moon rise. The merchant asked, half frustrated, half curious, "Why are you smiling? You have nothing. You own nothing. How can you be so at peace?" The monk looked up, smiled gently, and replied, "Because I own nothing, nothing owns me. My joy doesn't depend on protecting treasures or chasing more. Tonight, I have the moon, the cool breeze, and this breath. That is enough." For the first time, the merchant felt something shift. All his gold could not buy the simple freedom he saw in that monk's eyes. This story reflects a deep truth found in Buddhist philosophy. Our suffering grows not from what we lack, but from our endless craving for more. The Buddha once said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." Think about that. Contentment, not coins, not cars, not mansions. And isn't it true in our own lives? Have you ever met someone who seems to have it all, yet still complains, still chases, still feels restless? And maybe you've also met someone who doesn't own much but carries a joy that feels contagious, a peace that money simply cannot buy. So let me ask you, which form of wealth would you rather carry? The heavy burden of constantly needing more, or the lightness of knowing that what you already have is enough? Here's the paradox. We often believe more possessions equal more freedom. But often, it's the other way around. The bigger the house, the more time spent maintaining it. The more gadgets we own, the more we need to update, charge, repair, and replace. The more money we have, the more energy goes into protecting it, investing it, worrying over it. Possessions can be wonderful tools, but they can also become invisible cages. Now, this doesn't mean we should all give up our jobs, sell everything, and live under a tree. It's not about poverty versus wealth. It's about relationship. It's about asking, do I own my things, or do my things own me? I remember a personal moment when this teaching hit me. A few years ago, I bought a new phone, the latest model. For a few days, I was thrilled. The sleek design, the fast speed, the shiny features, it felt great. But not even a week later, I found myself scrolling online reviews of the next version, wondering if I should upgrade again. That's when I laughed out loud, because I realized, no matter what I buy, if I keep feeding this hunger, it will never end. The joy didn't come from the object, it came from my mind's brief illusion of having arrived. Once that faded, the craving was back. Maybe you've experienced something similar, with clothes, with cars, with vacations. That moment when the shine wears off, and suddenly the next desire takes over. It's exhausting, isn't it? So what's the alternative? The practice of needing less. In Buddhism, this is called santuthi, or contentment. It's not about rejecting life's pleasures, but about enjoying them without clinging. Eating a simple meal and truly tasting it. Sitting in a small home and feeling grateful for the roof over your head. Wearing a modest outfit and realizing it doesn't define your worth. One way to practice is through gratitude. Each morning, before reaching for your phone or rushing into tasks, pause and list 3 things you already have that bring you joy. It could be as small as your morning coffee, the laughter of a loved one, or even the simple gift of being alive today. This simple shift trains the mind to see abundance, not scarcity. Another way is mindful consumption. Before buying something new, ask, do I truly need this? Will it bring lasting value, or just a fleeting thrill? Sometimes the answer is yes, and that's fine. But often, the answer reveals a craving more than a real need. The richest person, then, is not the one with the fullest wallet, but the one with the fullest heart. The monk under the tree was rich in freedom, rich in peace, rich in joy. And those are forms of wealth no thief can steal, no economy can collapse, no time can erode. So, I'll leave you with this reflection. What would happen if, instead of chasing more, you tried living with less? Not less joy, not less love, but less clutter, less craving, less weight on your spirit. Would you, perhaps, discover that you've been rich all along? Closing. So where does true happiness really live? Is it hiding in the next promotion, the next purchase, the next milestone? Or is it waiting quietly in this very moment, in the simplicity of needing less? That's the question we'll explore in the next video. Happiness doesn't come from what's next. Until then, may you walk lightly, live simply, and discover the richness that was always within you. Simplicity in speech. Hook. Sometimes, the simplest words touch the heart far deeper than the most elaborate ones. Have you ever noticed how a single, honest sentence can stay with you for years, while long, decorated speeches fade from memory within hours? Words are powerful, but their power doesn't come from complexity or cleverness. It comes from truth, from clarity, from heart. We live in a world overflowing with language. Text messages, social media posts, endless news, marketing slogans, and constant conversations. Every day, thousands of words swirl around us, demanding attention. And yet, how many of them actually touch us? How many truly land in the heart? Sometimes, it's the quiet, simple words that linger. I believe in you. I'm here. I love you. No metaphors, no flourishes, just pure sincerity. Let me share a story that brings this to life. There was once a young student who came to his teacher, burdened with questions. He had read countless books, memorized scriptures, and filled his mind with theories. But the more he learned, the more confused he felt. One day, he asked, "Master, what is the path to freedom? How can I truly awaken?" The teacher did not deliver a long sermon. He didn't list complicated practices or intellectual explanations. Instead, he simply looked at the student with gentle eyes and said, "Breathe. Be present." 2 words. That was it. At first, the student was disappointed. He had expected something profound, something complex, something grand. But later, as he sat quietly, following his breath, those two simple words began to unfold their meaning. He realized the truth wasn't hidden in piles of books, but in the very moment he was living. From that day on, the student carried those words like a compass. Whenever he was lost, he returned to them. Breathe. Be present. This is the power of simplicity in speech. It's not about how much we say, but about whether what we say carries truth, kindness, and presence. In Buddhist teachings, this is connected to right speech, part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech isn't only about avoiding lies, gossip, or harshness. It's also about speaking with clarity, speaking with purpose, speaking in a way that reduces confusion and brings peace. And often, that means speaking simply. Think about your own life for a moment. When someone you love was going through pain, did they need a perfectly crafted lecture? Or did they need a few sincere words, like "I'm here for you," or even just silent presence? When a child learns to walk, do they need an essay on balance and biomechanics? No. They just need a smile, encouragement, and a hand to hold. Why, then, do we so often overcomplicate our own speech, adding layers of explanation, decoration, or even empty filler? Perhaps it's because we fear silence. Or maybe we fear that simplicity will seem too small. But ironically, it's often the simplest words that carry the most weight. I've seen this in my own life. I remember a time when I was struggling, caught in self-doubt, questioning my worth. A friend didn't give me advice, didn't try to fix me. They simply said, "I believe in you." That's all. 3 words. And yet, those words echoed louder than any long motivational speech ever could. On the other hand, I've also been in situations where people spoke endlessly, explaining, persuading, analyzing, but their words slip away without leaving an impact. Because truth doesn't need decoration. Heart doesn't need complexity. So let's ask ourselves, what would happen if we simplified our speech? If we chose words not to impress, but to connect? If we spoke less, but said more? This doesn't mean abandoning eloquence or refusing to express ourselves. Beauty in language has its place. But the heart of communication is not style, it's sincerity. When we speak simply, people don't have to work hard to understand us. They feel us. They sense the presence behind the words. And that's what creates trust, intimacy, and transformation. The Buddha himself often spoke in simple, clear phrases. One of his most well-known teachings is just 5 words. Hatred is never overcome by hatred. Think about that. Thousands of years have passed, countless books have been written, but those 5 words still carry the force of a lifetime of wisdom. So perhaps the question isn't what can I say to sound profound, but rather, what truth can I share simply so it can be remembered, lived, and felt? Let's bring this into daily life. Imagine you are in an argument. Emotions rise, voices sharpen, and words fly. In that moment, would a long explanation calm things down? Or would something simple, like "I care about this relationship," or "let's breathe before we continue," open a door that long sentences could never unlock? Or think about leadership. A leader who speaks in vague, complex jargon rarely inspires. But a leader who says, "We can do this together," ignites action. Even in spiritual practice, simplicity matters. Be present. Let go. Compassion first. These short reminders are often more powerful than entire volumes, because we can carry them in our hearts wherever we go. Now, simplicity in speech doesn't only help others, it also helps us. When we strip away unnecessary words, we train ourselves to think more clearly, to know what really matters, to separate what is essential from what is just noise. And in a world full of noise, clarity is a gift. So, I invite you to reflect. What are the simple words that have stayed with you in life? Maybe something your parents once said, maybe something a friend whispered, maybe even something you told yourself. And then, consider this. Whose life could you touch today with a few simple, sincere words? Because the truth is, you don't need to be a poet or a philosopher to change someone's day. Sometimes, "I'm here." "You matter." "I love you." That's enough. More than enough. Closing. So, how can we practice simplicity in our own communication? How can we shift from speaking to impress to speaking to connect? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. Speak less, love more. Until then, may your words be simple, May your speech be gentle, and may your heart shine through every sentence. Simplicity in love. Hook. Love doesn't need to be complicated. It only needs to be sincere. We often imagine love as something grand, dramatic, or difficult to express. Movies, novels, and songs fill our minds with ideas that love must be proven through extravagant gestures, expensive gifts, or perfect words. But let me ask you, in your own life, what moments of love have touched you most deeply? Were they moments wrapped in luxury, or were they often small, humble, simple acts of sincerity? I want to share a story with you. There was once a child who didn't have much. One day, while walking home from school, he saw a small wildflower growing by the roadside. To anyone else, it was ordinary, something people might overlook or even step on. But the child picked the flower, carefully carried it home, and placed it into the hands of his parents. He said, "I saw this, and I thought of you." That was it. No big speech. No expensive wrapping. Just a fragile wildflower, offered with pure love. And yet, when the parents received it, tears welled in their eyes. Because what mattered wasn't the flower itself, it was the sincerity. It was the fact that their child, with an innocent heart, thought of them and wanted to give. I wonder, how many times in your own life have you been moved, not by price tags or grandeur, but by simple sincerity? In Buddhist teachings, true love is never about conditions. It is not "I love you if," or "I love you when." It is not measured by cost or performance. True love, or met, loving kindness, is unconditional. It's the ability to say, "I wish for your happiness," simply because you exist. That wildflower carried more love than any diamond, because it came from the heart. But here's the paradox. We live in a culture that often confuses love with performance. Holidays become pressure-filled with expectations. Valentine's Day cards, birthdays, anniversaries. Advertisements tell us that love must look like jewelry, fancy dinners, or luxury vacations. There's nothing wrong with gifts or celebrations. They can be beautiful expressions. But when love becomes measured by how much money we spend, we risk forgetting its essence: presence, sincerity, connection. Sometimes, the truest love shows up not as a box tied with a ribbon, but as someone sitting quietly beside you when your heart is breaking. Or as someone remembering the little details about you, your favorite song, your morning coffee habit, the way your eyes light up when you see the ocean. So let me ask you, what if love didn't need to be proven through more, but revealed through less? Through being present, being honest, being real? Think about your own relationships. A hug at the right moment, a handwritten note, a listening ear. These things cost almost nothing, yet they heal and connect in ways money cannot. I remember once visiting a monastery where the monks lived with very few possessions. They ate simple meals, wore simple robes, and lived without the comforts many of us take for granted. And yet, when you spoke with them, you felt surrounded by warmth, by genuine kindness. One monk told me, "Love is simple. It is wishing well for others, without expecting anything in return." That stayed with me, because I realized how often, in my own life, I made love complicated, mixing it with expectations, conditions, or even pride. But when we strip those away, what remains is simple: the heart's natural capacity to care. And here's the beauty: simple love doesn't just make others happy, it heals us too. When we love without conditions, without calculations, we free ourselves from the exhausting game of constant measuring. We don't worry, am I enough? Did I give enough? Did they notice? Instead, we live from a space of generosity, and in that giving, we feel light. Buddhism teaches that the greatest gift is not gold or silver, but a kind heart. Because while wealth can disappear, the energy of love enriches everyone it touches, including the giver. Now, imagine if we practiced this kind of simple, sincere love daily. Imagine if, instead of waiting for special occasions, we sprinkled our days with small acts of kindness, sending a thoughtful message, holding the door, really listening when someone speaks, smiling at a stranger. It doesn't take much. And yet, it can transform not only relationships, but entire communities. Think about it. What would your workplace feel like if everyone practiced one small act of kindness a day? What would your family feel like if love was shown in simple ways, consistently, without condition? I'd like to invite you to reflect. Who in your life might need a wildflower today? Not literally a flower, but a simple gesture that says, "I see you. I care." Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a note left on the fridge. Maybe it's just giving someone your full attention without rushing. You see, the size of the act doesn't matter. What matters is the heart behind it. And maybe we also need to ask ourselves, are we open to receiving love in simple ways, too? Sometimes we overlook these small gestures because we are waiting for something grand. A child gives us a drawing, and we dismiss it as just scribbles. A partner makes us tea, and we overlook it because we are hoping for a bigger surprise. But what if those small acts are the very essence of love, and by ignoring them, we miss love itself? There's a beautiful teaching in Buddhism. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows them like a shadow that never leaves. The same is true with love. When we love with a pure mind, even the smallest act can ripple endlessly. So maybe the invitation today is not to do more, but to simplify, to return to the heart, to remember that love is not in the wrapping, it's in the sincerity. Closing. So, how does simple, sincere love heal us? How does it restore broken hearts, soften anger, and bring peace? That's what we'll explore in the next video. Love as a healing energy. Until then, may you notice the wildflowers along your path. May you give and receive love in its simplest form. And may you discover that in simplicity, love shines brightest. Living simply, the path that lasts. Hook. Living simply is not just a choice, it is a path that leads us to lasting peace. Script. When we hear the word simplicity, many of us think of minimalism, decluttering our homes, or owning fewer things. And yes, that's part of it. But in the wisdom of the Buddha, simplicity goes far deeper. It's about lightening the load in our hearts and minds, so we can walk through life with freedom, clarity, and peace. Let me ask you, how many times in your life have you felt weighed down, not by your possessions, but by expectations, comparisons, and endless desires? Sometimes it feels like we are carrying a heavy backpack filled with things we don't even need. We walk, but every step is harder, and we wonder why life feels exhausting. The Buddha taught a beautiful principle called Salyu Jitsu. In English, to desire little and be content. This isn't about suppressing joy or ambition. It's about realizing that chasing more will never bring us to peace, because more has no finish line. But choosing to live with enough creates a foundation of stability that cannot be shaken. Think about it. A simple meal, shared with people you love, often feels more nourishing than an expensive banquet where your heart is distracted. A simple walk in nature, breathing fresh air, can bring more clarity than rushing through a busy mall filled with noise. True wealth is not measured by what we accumulate, but by how deeply we can appreciate the present moment. There is an old story told in Buddhist circles. A king once asked a humble monk, "Why are you so content with so little? Don't you miss the pleasures of the world?" The monk smiled and replied, "It is not that I have little, Your Majesty. It is that I am free from the illusion that I need more." This freedom is the gift of simplicity. It doesn't take away joy, it actually multiplies it. Why? Because when we live simply, we stop scattering our attention across hundreds of wants, and we can finally see and cherish what's already here. Maybe you've had this experience. When you finally clean out your closet, or organize your living space, suddenly you feel lighter, not just physically, but mentally. That's the power of letting go of the unnecessary. Now imagine doing that not only with things, but with habits, relationships, and thoughts that no longer serve you. That's when simplicity becomes more than a style of living. It becomes a path. And this path is not about deprivation. It's not about rejecting life's beauty. It's about enjoying beauty in its purest form, without the layers of craving and comparison that so often blur our vision. When we live simply, we stop measuring life by how much and start experiencing life by how deeply. The Buddha himself lived this way. Born a prince surrounded by luxury, he gave it all up, not because wealth was evil, but because he saw that comfort without wisdom could never satisfy the heart. He discovered that true happiness comes from inner peace, not outer possessions. And his example reminds us, to live simply is not to live less, but to live more fully, more awake, more free. Now, let's make this personal. Ask yourself, where in your life could simplicity open a door to peace? Is it in your home, where too many objects crowd your space? Is it in your schedule, where busyness leaves no room for rest? Is it in your relationships, where unspoken expectations weigh heavier than love? Sometimes, simplicity means saying no to things that drain us. Sometimes, it means learning to appreciate small joys without always seeking the next. And sometimes, it means trusting that enough really is enough. I remember a friend who used to constantly upgrade everything. New phone every year, new car every few years, always chasing the next thing. But the strange part was, he never seemed satisfied. Then one day, after a health scare, he started shifting. He sold his big house, moved into a smaller place, spent more time outdoors, and started cooking simple meals at home. And for the first time in years, he looked truly happy. His laughter had weight again. His eyes had light again. He told me, "I thought I was giving up luxury, but actually I found freedom." That's the paradox. When we let go of excess, we don't lose, we gain. We gain space, time, clarity, and peace. So here's the gentle truth. Living simply is not just a lifestyle trend, not just about decluttering your wardrobe or eating organic food. It is a spiritual path, a path toward an inner stability that no economy, no fashion, no social approval can shake. And this path is bien lao, lasting. Because unlike possessions, which wear out, break, or go out of style, inner peace only grows stronger with time. It's like a tree rooted deeply in the earth. Storms may come, but the roots keep it steady. Simplicity keeps us grounded. It reminds us that happiness is not out there, waiting in the next purchase, the next promotion, or the next achievement. Happiness is here, now, in the breath you're taking, in the people who love you, in the quiet joys that surround you when you pause to notice them. So perhaps the real question we each must ask is, what am I carrying that I no longer need? And what could my life feel like if I walked a little lighter, a little freer? Because simplicity is not the end of joy, it is the doorway to lasting joy. It is not about having less life, but about removing the noise so we can finally live the life that's truly ours. Closing. So today we've seen, simplicity is not just about outer choices, but about an inner orientation. It's about living with enough, so our blessings remain steady, and our hearts remain free. It's about walking a path that endures, one that leads us to lasting peace. But this journey doesn't stop here. If simplicity is the path, then how do we begin walking it in everyday life? How do we take the first step today, not tomorrow? That's what we'll explore in the next video. How to begin living simply, starting today.